this is Kate from Generate Magic, and today I'm going to talk about how having a compelling vision helps you to achieve everything it is that you desire. And it helps to eliminate all the questions of how, and just to ease like all of the doubt and the uncertainty. It helps to smooth out any perceived obstacles, whether they be external or internal, that may arise along your journey to actualizing your vision. It helps you to transmit these perceived obstacles and challenges into stepping stones, into opportunities, and really just to use everything as a fuel towards actualizing your vision. And it just makes the journey so much more joyful and flow-based, and helps to kind of remove any sense of struggle or frustration, or at least it lessens the sense of struggle and frustration that you may experience in the process of actualizing your vision. And it's very much like Maxwell Maltz and Psycho-Cybernetics describes as the servo mechanism, where once you have this vision, everything else is like everything flows automatically from there. And it's almost kind of like the divine hand is guiding you each step of the way. And so I was actually inspired to make this video from a share from Maggie, aka Neville Goddess. She had shared something on her community channel, and it was a video featuring Arnold Schwarzenegger. And it was some channel, I think it was called like Motivation Hub. I'll link to it in the description. And I don't typically watch videos like this just because I kind of find the music and the imagery like a little bit cheesy, but because it was her that recommended it, and I do like Arnold a lot, and so I find him very charismatic, and I've always liked him as an actor. I've always enjoyed his movies, and so I felt compelled to watch it. And what he said in the video was all about the power of having a vision. And so again, I'm going to link to it. I'm not going to try to recreate everything that he said, but I will talk about some of the things that stood out to me. And so he talks about his childhood growing up in Austria. And he talks about looking at all the farmhouses and just thinking to himself, like, this isn't for me, like I was meant for something else. And I want to emphasize that this is not to say that there's anything wrong with being a farmer. And for some people that is their calling. But rather the message is about finding what's true for you, what's authentically true for you. And for each one of us, it's going to be different. And also going against what his family was encouraging him to do. So his family was encouraging him to stay in Austria. And so I think a lot of us can relate to that, and just kind of doing, having something kind of brewing up within us and perhaps suppressing it because all the people around us are telling us, are kind of encouraging us to do the opposite. And maybe even being afraid to give voice to whatever it is that's arising within us. And it also relates to what I write about in my novel, the character who's very loosely based on me, named Hannah. She, at the beginning of the novel, she's kind of reflecting on her life and thinking, she's trying to convince herself that she's happy with her life. But then she says, deep down, I knew that I was meant for greatness. That I was meant for something more. And greatness is it's not like a matter of comparison. It's not like, oh, I'm better than somebody else. It's not something, one of these falsehoods that the ego invents, but it's rather your personal version of greatness, and every single one of us has it. And it's expressing yourself in a way that is uniquely meant for you. And so that something about that really spoke to me. And so first of all, just acknowledging that urge and not trying to suppress it, but honoring it. And then Arnold talks about how he saw a magazine, and there was a picture of a famous bodybuilder in the magazine. And that's what inspired him to initially get into fitness and get into bodybuilding. And he would work out. He was describing his process of working out, and it was something like 6 hours a day. And he said, people would ask him, like, man, that's a lot. Like, how do you do it? And he said the whole time he was doing it, he was filled with joy. He had a smile on his face because he was guided by this vision. And so I think especially for those of us who have played a sport or did anything related to health and fitness, can definitely relate to this, because sometimes just on a very surface level, like on a physical level, exerting ourselves, our bodies in that way, and in a way that may not be familiar to us, can be very excruciating and can be very uncomfortable. And then if we throw kind of negativity into the mix, where maybe we're judging ourselves or comparing ourselves unfavorably to others, or where we think we should be, that makes that adds more struggle and frustration to the process, and many of us end up giving up just as we've started. But he talks about how, because he had this vision, it's almost like it was the hand of God, and it was guiding him along, and it was making this journey very joy-filled and just very exuberant. And I want to talk about two instances where this occurred for me. And one of the instances was something where it seemed like nothing was happening on the surface. It very much kind of seemed like this notion of not even having to lift a finger. And so I was at Burning Man, and it was the very first time I had done anything of this nature. Growing up, I was very shy, very isolated. I was very much like a bookworm. I had very few friends. I had always had trouble like connecting to and relating to other people. But it was one of my coworkers at the California Pizza Kitchen who invited me to go with her and her boyfriend at the time, who's now her husband, to the Burning Man Festival. And it was very much a life-changing experience for me. It's like this whole new part of myself was born. But I remember the very last day at the festival feeling very depressed, because I was like, oh, I'm just going to go back to my humdrum life where I'm just, again, this very like isolated person with no friends. And because it was towards the end of the week of this festival, I was very tired. And I do want to emphasize I was not under the influence of anything other than lack of sleep. And so as I was dancing, it's almost like I kind of went into this trance because I was so tired. And it could be kind of what some people refer to as like the state akin to sleep. And I had this vision, of myself entering this room, and people in the room were like excited to see me. They were calling out my name, which was unlike anything I had ever experienced in real life. And it's only in the retelling of the story that I can put all the pieces together. At the time, I didn't think anything of it. And so a few weeks, so it is like everything kind of flowed automatically from that vision. And so just a couple of weeks later, through a series of very unlikely synchronicities, I'll tell one of them because it is a good story. So it didn't end very well with my friends and I. There was a couple of people in our group that sort of had like a breakdown, and so they left the rest of us to clean up the mess, and everybody was just very exhausted and very emotional. And so my friend that had organized this whole thing felt very hurt, very betrayed, and on top of it, like I said, it was just like a lot of exhaustion. And so she and we all, took like U-Hauls, just to take all our stuff. And so on the drive home, she was sitting in the parking lot in her U-Haul crying. And then there was a man next to her in a U-Haul who was also crying, and they kind of looked at each other, and he was like, oh, was Burning Man difficult for you too? And so they got to know each other. They exchanged numbers. As it turned out, they were, all of us were from Los Angeles, so he was also from Los Angeles. And he is basically how I got introduced to the underground dance scene. And sure enough, it's almost kind of like I got teleported into this reality where all of a sudden I did have like the circle of friends, and it was like the first time in my entire life that I had ever felt connected to anybody. And so it all just arose very naturally and very effortlessly from this vision. And then the second example I want to give is the example that's kind of more in line with the one that Arnold gives. And so there was a time in my life, and I write about my character in the book also goes through this, of just being very, very like unhappy with my body, and just not feeling good and not feeling comfortable in my skin, and just not being happy with my body. And so I don't want to go into specifics, because I don't want to kind of introduce any ideas of like what an ideal body is, because for each person it's different. But the bottom line is that I wasn't happy with it, and I didn't feel good in my own skin. And so there was a point where I looked in the mirror and I was like, something has to change. I'm tired of feeling this way. This has to change. And it was just this very strong, very decisive moment for me. And keep in mind, I didn't know anything at that time about personal development. I didn't know anything about manifestation or spirituality or anything esoteric of that nature. And probably, as Arnold did not either when he saw that picture in the magazine. It was just like a very clear and very decisive turning point for me of, this is like I'm creating something new for myself. And so for me, my vision, it was not visual, in the sense that it was not like I saw a picture of a woman in a magazine and thought, oh, I want to look like that. But rather, it was more, the best way to describe it is an internal vision. And it was just this feeling of being happy with what I saw when I looked in the mirror, and just feeling good in my body and feeling good in my skin. And that was the vision that guided me through all of these workouts and all of these exercise routines. And I remember taking a PE class so I was in college. I was an undergrad in college at the time, and I took this PE class, and we were running up and down stairs, and we were doing like medicine balls and like weights and jump roping and all these different things that as a kid I hated. Like especially being like a chubby kid, and then, combined with the Texas heat, and I just found all of those kinds of activities just like excruciating. And so this was in Los Angeles, so there was definitely still heat, so I want to make that clear, but it was a whole new mentality with which I was approaching it. And I would even just for fun, I would go to the track on my own, and like I would do sprints. And I don't think I would do that now. Like I have, my definition of fun and exercise has changed very drastically, but at the time I was guided by this vision. And I also want to make it clear that during this time, I did not step on a scale. I did not measure myself. I did not like scrutinize myself in the mirror, because I felt like if I had done any of those things, then I might have gotten discouraged by my perceived lack of progress, and I may have given up. But it was my vision that guided me, and it was internal. It was not quote unquote out there. And so that was my guiding light. And I was not even aware of my body changing. It was not until other people began to comment on it that's when I recognized that the change had taken place. And so there's a lot of debate in the manifestation community about action versus no action. And so some people might kind of look at my first example and consider that a legitimate manifestation because there was no action involved, or no seeming action involved, versus the second example where there was seeming action involved. But I want to kind of get away from all these debates, which I think are very surface level, because I think we're really going for something deeper here and something more next level here. And it's to stop seeing everything through this lens of separation. And in fact, I made another video about this, that really everything we're always acting. And even if you're just sitting there, that too is an action. Visualizing is an action. Affirming is an action. Sleeping is an action. And the point is that as long as we're in existence, we're always being something. And so I see it as we are all God in action. And so in our physical human avatars, that's our way of being this divine expression. And that's our way of merging the spiritual with the physical. And that's our way of merging this infinite consciousness, this divine consciousness, with the physical beings that we are, who are living this linear and seemingly limited existence. And so it's a way of merging it and a way of bridging it all together. And so the more that you see all of your actions, every step you do, every thought you think, every feeling, every step you take, as being divinely guided and being in contribution to your vision and to whatever your ideal is, and then you'll begin to see how it all flows together very naturally and very effortlessly. And you'll stop trying to make these distinctions between action versus no action, physical versus non-physical, imagination versus quote unquote quote real, manifested versus non-manifested. I think you get the point. And so again, in summary, when you have a compelling vision, and yes, I want to also make it clear that it's not, to me, it's not about the details in your vision. So it's not about having the perfect quote unquote imaginal scene. And it's not necessarily being able to see in, picture perfect detail every single little drop of your scene as if it were a painting. And so, because as I said, like in the second example, it was much more of an internal vision. And so the point is not like the physical details, but rather what it means to you and how it drives you and how you relate to it in each and every moment. And the more you can see everything you do as a contribution to this vision, and even seeing perceived failures and perceived missteps and challenges and setbacks, all of it as being in contribution to actualizing your vision. And the more you'll start to see, and the more all of this sense of separation will start to collapse, and you'll start to see it's really all one. And the sense that we're, even on this journey, actualizing our vision, that that's just an illusion, but at the same time to enjoy the illusion because that's what we came here for. And so with that, thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful day.